Hello friends, and welcome to another online video of Ms. Hoskins' AP Environmental Science. This section is on population and community ecology. We have explored the factors that determine population size, as well as models or predictions on how to predict population growth or decline. However, the size of a population tells us nothing that determines the distribution of populations across the planet. There are two factors that determine whether a species will persist in a location. And the survival of a species in a habitat is also determined by a set of interactions that it has with other species. And so in this section, we're going to explore the model of these relationships in community ecology. So you need to be able to identify the interactions that cause negative effects on one or both species, discuss species interactions that cause neutral or positive effects, and then explain the role of what we call a keystone species. The science of community ecology is the study of interactions among species. Some interactions have negative effects on one or both species. Other interactions involve neutral or positive effects for both species. And as we will see throughout the world of species interaction, some of the relationships are symbiotic, which means that the two species are living in very, very close association and location with each other. Some of the best known species interactions are those that cause one or both species to be negatively affected by the other. These interactions include competition, predation, parasitism, and herbivory. Here we are again back at the 1934 Russian scientist Georgie Goss, who studied the different paramecium species and their effects on population growth when he fed them different things, or rather different amounts of food. And when he grew the two species, they both grew very rapidly and eventually reached a carrying capacity. But when he grew them together, he noticed that the two species separately, they both achieved large population sizes. However, together, one of them continued to grow well, while the other species died and declined and eventually became extinct in the container. And so these experiments demonstrated that two species competing for the same limiting resource cannot exist in 1934. Competition is a struggle of individuals to obtain a shared limiting resource. So for one of those species of paramecium, it outcompeted the other. And Goss's observations, combined with additional experiments with other organisms, led to what researchers now call the competitive exclusion principle. And that states that two species competing for the same limiting resource cannot coexist. And under a given set of environmental conditions, when two species have the same realized niche, they live in the same space and in the same place, one species will perform better and one will drive the other one to extinction. So we see competition at work throughout nature, and there's lots of examples where, like many plants, influence the distribution or abundance of another plant. Like in the goldenrod example, where they're dominant, but then they're eventually outcompeted in the New England forest by other trees that want to grow in. So competition for a limiting resource can lead to what we call resource partitioning. Resource partitioning, in which two species divide a resource based on differences between their behavior, or like morphology, like their physical attributes. And so, like in evolutionary terms, when competition reduces the ability of an individual to survive and reproduce, natural selection will favor individuals that overlap less with other species in that resource area. So this figure here shows this process at work. So let's imagine two species of birds eat seeds of different sizes. Species 1 is represented in blue, while some individuals eat small seeds and others eat medium seeds. And species number 2 is represented by yellow. And some individuals eat medium seeds and others eat large seeds. So as a result, individuals of both of these species are competing for medium seeds. The overlap is represented in here in green. If species 1 is the better competitor for the medium seed, then the individuals of species 2 that are competing for the medium seeds will have poor survival and reproduction. So after several generations, species number 2 will evolve to contain fewer individuals that feed off of these medium-sized seeds. So this process of resource partitioning reduces competition between two species. And species in nature reduce overlap in several ways. Like one strategy is temporal resource partitioning, which is a process in which the two species utilize the same resource at different times. So wolves and coyotes are a good example of this. Wolves and coyotes, they live in the same territory and are active at different times of the day. So the overlap in the times of hunting is the green area, is the competitive part. Some plants can also do this very similarly, where the competition for a pollinator might be at the exact same time of year. And for that, there's a time competition there. But if you're a wolf or a coyote and you live in the same territory, it benefits you for one of you to be active more closer towards dusk and the other one more active towards dawn. And that minimizes your competition overlap. So if you're a plant and you can't move, you have a spatial resource partitioning. So species who do this face competition for a shared limiting resource, and they may evolve some way to partition this resource and reduce the competition amongst everyone else who's next to them. So where wolves and coyotes can move and sleep or change other patterns, desert plants are one thing that cannot. So among desert plants is this tar brush. And it grows extremely deep roots, and they reach this very, very deep water source. Whereas most of the grasses that live in this same harsh environment have very extensive shallow root systems that spread laterally across the top surface of the dirt. And so even though these two plants are in competition for the same resource, i.e. water underground, they have evolved two different strategies that allow them to live and coexist together, but use the resource differently. One of the most dramatic species interaction occurs between predators and their prey. So predation is an interaction in which one animal typically kills and consumes the other animal. Predators include things like lions and who eat gazelles, or owls who eat small rodents. Organisms of all shapes and sizes are and can be predators, and their effects on their prey can be widely different. One of the very specialized type of predation is known as parasitism. Parasitoids are animals that lay eggs inside of other organisms, who we refer to as their host. And when those eggs hatch, the parasitoid larvae slowly come to the surface of the host. And eventually, sometimes it leads, unfortunately, to host death. So parasitoids include lots of species of wasps and flies, and it is a type of predation relationship. Parasitism is an interaction in which one organism lives off the other organism, and it's referred to as a host as well. But because parasites typically come in only a fraction, small tiny, they're small tiny little creatures, and they only take up a small fraction of what their host is doing and their host resources. A single parasite really causes the death of a host. Parasites includes things like tapeworms and intestinal animals and lots of things that live in our bloodstream. Parasites that cause disease or they cause their host to become very ill are what we call pathogens. And pathogens include things like virus, bacteria, there's even fungal pathogens. We now know of protist group. There's lots of organisms that we know now as pathogens.